Here's Johnny!
How can you get this wrong? It seems almost impossible that you can take giant lizards escaping into the general populace and then make it into the most uninteresting, convoluted, gibberingly idiotic nonsense it has ever been my misfortune to sit through. And I watched Carnosaur 1, 2 and 3. Okay, maybe I've encountered things that were worse, but rarely have I done so when they had such a good chance of actually being worthwhile and terrifyingly interesting. It is just beyond me that they could take the concept that they had left over from the previous movie and then not run with it in a realistic and interesting way. There should have been terrified campers being woken in the middle of the night by Tyrannosaurus Rex peering in through their motorhome windows. There should have been dirt bikers being chased down by packs of velociraptors and scenes of triceratops running through midtown traffic smashing up cars as they went, and any other number of blood-curdling horrifying events as these creatures were released onto an unsuspecting, unprepared populace. Instead they decided, let's set this movie 4 years in the future after all of this interesting stuff that our audience would like to see has already happened. That way the dinosaurs will achieve maximum irrelevance in our movie series, which is supposed to be about dinosaurs. Instead, we are left with the bizarre story about a cloned girl who is being sought after by the nefarious genetics company Biosyn because they want to make better genetically engineered giant locusts that they have been using to help promote their own bioengineered crops by using them to destroy all non-Biosyn crops in America, and threatening the world with possible starvation. It is a massive wasted opportunity, and I can't even begin to believe that this is what they had intended when they came up with the character of the cloned girl in the first place. In fact, at this point I don't believe they had any kind of plan when they created the cloned girl, except to have the haunted house scenes that they put in the previous movie. And don't get me wrong, the bit where the Indoraptor was creeping around in the girl's bedroom and then about to claw her in her bed was a great scene, and in fact the only part of that movie that I actually liked. But how is it that they had no other plan for the little cloned girl? In this movie we discover that the original girl had actually grown into an adult and was responsible for cloning herself, and then if that wasn't creepy enough, she impregnated herself with her own clone, so she ended up being the mother of herself. Yeah. Then she found out she was dying of some sort of genetic illness, which she then eradicated from the clone of herself. So what was her aim? Was she trying to give herself another life? Was she trying to make a version of herself that would go on to live a long life and so therefore carry on her genes? But she created a clone before she even knew she was dying of an illness. I don't understand. It's utter... Why didn't she simply have sex with some guy and then have a baby, and it would have been much less creepy? Or if she was really that obsessed with eliminating her genetic abnormality, surely she could have just combined her DNA with that of some other man and then made the genetic adjustments to get rid of the illness that she had been suffering from without making an exact clone of herself. The whole thing made no sense and left you feeling as though there had been no reason to even include her in the previous movie, as they clearly hadn't thought any further about what to do with the character. And then we have the original Jurassic Park movie cast, who are given their own adventure, which essentially boils down to Ellie Sattler, who is in touch with the CIA, wanting a DNA sample from the giant locust so that she can prove that Biosyn is behind the destruction of crops. She visits Alan Grant and asks him to give her a hand, and together they pop over to Biosyn headquarters where Malcolm works as a lecturer and is also the inside man helping Alan and Ellie bring the company down.
That is one big pile of shit.
Cue scenes of Alan, Ellie and Malcolm being silly and generally slightly useless. Okay, now let's cut away from the original cast and look instead at the modern cast. Owen Grady and his goddamn stupid freaking bloody hand, which it turns out seems to be catching as other characters start using it. With Blue it made sense, because he raised her, but why the bloody hell would it work on some random dinosaur that he has never come into contact with before? Look at the hand is your master, obey the hand, there is nothing but the hand controls your fate, the hand is your god, obey the hand! It is the most stupid bloody nonsense and it drives me crazy. Calm down, just don't think about how goddamn stupid it is. Okay, so Owen is now with Claire and they're treating Clone Girl as though she was their daughter. At least they're treating her how you should treat your daughter these days, by which I mean keeping her away from all the crazies, and trying not to let her out of their sight, because some psychotic pink-haired loon will start trying to convince her that she is a man, and that she should get her lady bits cut off, and become as psychologically damaged as the pink-haired freaks. Okay, I went a bit too far there, but I only wish I was joking about that subject. Society has become a cesspool of degradation, overindulgence, political satire made real, and the worst people who have ever lived are being given positions of power. It's weird how that shit happens. Okay, where was I? Yes, so they've been trying to keep Clone Girl away from other people because they think that she will be in danger from the people that they saved her from in the second movie. Lo and behold, it turns out they were right. And they are also pretty crap at keeping an eye on her, because the moment they blink, she wanders off and gets kidnapped by Biosyn. For good measure, they also kidnap Blue's baby. Yes, Blue, it turns out, is somehow asexual, and can reproduce all on her own. The frogs are old hat these days, and she don't need no man. Yep, somehow even a fictional velociraptor, that is really a Utah raptor, is not safe from gender politics. Clone Girl and Baby Blue are taken to nefarious genetics company Biosyn's headquarters, which just so happens to be where Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler and Devon Malcolm are. At this point, we are introduced to Kayla Watts, a former US Air Force pilot who I found to be extremely annoying, because she is in fact one of the kidnappers of Blue's baby. But she never admits to as much during the movie, and so never takes responsibility for her role in causing all the trouble that she eventually helps to fix. Also, she was clearly introduced to the franchise because they needed a badass woman of colour so that they could meet their diversity quotas. After all, the original Jurassic World movie was made in 2015 and so predates the current racially driven political movement destroying all creativity and integrity in Hollywood and beyond. In fact, if they had made this movie as a standalone movie and just had her and Owen in it, this could have actually been quite an interesting movie rather than all the other crap. But no, that's not what happened. She ends up helping Owen and Claire as they hunt for Clone Girl and Baby Blue, but she is just yet another unnecessary cog in an already bloated and unwieldy cast. Once at Biosyn headquarters, we meet Dr. Henry Wu, who has now decided he doesn't want to be a bad guy anymore, and so shows Clone Girl videos of herself, but not herself because they're her original. She finds out that her original made herself pregnant with herself. Brings a new meaning to go f*** yourself when you can get pregnant from it. After giving birth to herself, original self found out that she was dying from some genetic disease. She then uses gene therapy, not on herself but on her baby clone, to change the baby's DNA so that she won't have the genetic disease. And this is what happens when mental illness is considered normal. Poor old original must have had some serious issues to choose to impregnate herself with her own clone instead of, doing the horizontal tango with a man she actually likes and having a baby the natural way. Anyway, at this point we are introduced to the bad guy, who it turns out is just Dodgson.
Dodgson! We've got Dodgson here!
And he is probably the least interesting bad guy that ever lived.
See, nobody cares.
He has no teeth. He is just some corporate guy who is just trying to make his company number one in the world. It is a massive letdown and leaves you feeling as though you have been cheated out of a real antagonist because the dinosaurs have no teeth. The bad guy has no teeth. There are no real threats in this world. It is just a boring mix of resignation and acceptance of the status quo. The status quo being that dinosaurs have become boring everyday creatures that are no more interesting than the flock wallpaper at your local Indian restaurant. And you remember that Malcolm was supposed to be the guy pulling the strings in the background from within Biosyn and helping Alan and Ellie achieve their goal of getting a genetic sample of the giant locust so that Biosyn can be stopped from creating a world famine? Well, it turns out no. He is just a pawn being controlled by this guy, Ramsey Cole, a person who really has no place in this movie and is yet again just another cog to be jammed into the machine that by this point is no longer able to function because it is jammed solid with unmoving, unthought out, irrelevant cogs. The role again was clearly created at the last minute so that another dash of representation could be added to the movie. He completely subsumed the entire point of Malcolm's role and left him looking like a gibbering idiot. Malcolm used to be one of my favourite characters, but the Jurassic World movies have turned him into a caricature that has no value except to spout the odd bit of mumbo-jumbo nonsense as if it is credible and interesting. He is utterly wasted. Anyway, Claire and Owen have an encounter with black market dinosaur traders after being directed there by a CIA friend of Claire's. It is here that Kelly helps them get away from a bunch of velociraptors that have been sicked on them by a biosyn flunky using a laser pointer which, unlike the previous movie with the Indoraptor, doesn't require it to stay pointed at the target. Instead, now just flicking it on and off again is enough for the raptors to fix on a target, which is simply not how this technology works. So, Owen and Claire escape with the help of dinosaur thief Kelly, who uses her aeroplane to take them to Biosyn's headquarters. Unfortunately, they are attacked by a large pterosaur and have to perform a crash landing. At this point, we have one of the only parts of the movie that is filled with tension, and that is when Claire parachutes out of the doomed plane and has an encounter with a Therizinosaurus. It is almost as creepy as thinking about a girl impregnating herself with herself. After Alan and Ellie end up causing Dodgson to destroy the giant locusts in a fireball which also manages to set fire to the surrounding dinosaur-infested forest, the old cast and the new cast finally meet up, along with Clone Girl, and they use the power of the hand. Obey the hand! To catch Baby Blue, and then they are attacked by Gigantosaurus and escape in a scene that has none of the scary drama that made the Jurassic Park movies quite hair-raising at times, as they escape a battle of the giants involving Gigantosaurus, Tyrannosaurus Rex and Therizinosaurus, with Rexy and Therizinosaurus winning the day with a bit of extremely unlikely teamwork. Then Dr. Henry Wu fixes the giant locust problem and everyone lives happily ever after. Alan even gets the girl at last, which I think we can all agree that he deserves. We are then treated to a series of scenes showing the dinosaurs and modern animals living peacefully with each other as elephants frolic with triceratops, and horses run free with iguanodons, and giant sea creature befriends whales. All is well with the world. It almost brings a tear to your eye. Except that it was all a pile of shit. Dinosaurs would either be eating or killing all of these animals, whether deliberately or not. Farmers would be out exterminating dinosaurs because they keep demolishing their fences or eating their livestock. Giant plant-eating dinosaurs would consume so much plant matter that whole ecosystems would collapse, since they aren't evolved to deal with these creatures. Apex predators like wolves, bears, wild dogs, and probably even tigers would become prey to far better equipped dinosaurs, and since their numbers are already low, would be wiped out. The world would destroy itself and we would be forced to kill all of the dinosaurs except some that we would put in zoos, and we would find ourselves right back at square one with Jurassic frickin' Park. It is a circular nonsense story that wasted all of our times and left us with a series of movies that destroyed the entire premise of dinosaurs being released into the human world. And the really stupid thing is that they didn't show us any of the awesome stories of how terrifying it would have been to have dinosaurs living among us. They skipped that part, and we are left with this stupid circle jerk of shit that did nothing except ruin a once great and noble franchise. Okay, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I was never a fan of the Jurassic World movies, though the first one was okay, I guess. But they have slowly played themselves out to the point where they cared so little about the dinosaurs and so little about the original premise that they made themselves completely irrelevant. And the narrative went from, imagine what would happen if we brought dinosaurs back to life and they escaped and started eating people, to imagine what would happen if people genetically engineered dinosaurs and then we used that technology to recreate giant prehistoric locusts that would eat the world's crops and eventually starve people to death. The first sounds like an exciting premise full of blood, guts and scarily horrifying moments. The second sounds like you might catch it on TV. But if the locusts don't eat people, what's the point? Jurassic Park is still a great premise, but Hollywood is so creatively bankrupt that even something as simple as dinosaurs eating people is sanitized and watered down to the point where it is no longer an exciting prospect and is instead just big budget garbage. One day, the franchise will simply be rebooted. And when that day comes, I really hope that we have a different Hollywood. A Hollywood that has learned its lesson. A Hollywood that has set aside political agendas and instead simply wants to entertain us and tell great stories. We will get there, because the law of economics means that they can't do this without money, and so will need us to want to go to the cinema and actually watch it, rather than making vanity projects that no one gives a crap about because who cares what Hollywood thinks is important. We just want to be entertained, not lectured to about intersectionality and race by people who don't have the education to even understand the subject they are attempting to browbeat us with. This has been Movies Suck, hoping that this franchise is dead, at least for now. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.